Hey there, welcome to my YouTube channel. My name is Sarah. We have my little munchkin. She's 3 weeks old today, and it's been quite wild. I haven't filmed a video in a hot minute, but anywho, today I wanted to talk about my positive induction and natural delivery. I know in a previous video that I made, I said that the last thing that I wanted to do is get induced. And since we were cutting close to my due date, you know, that was like a topic of the conversation that we were having, like my OB and I were having. She asked me, she's like, do you want to be induced? And I was like, no, like that's literally the last thing that I want to do is have an induction. I've talked to like a few moms or whatever who've given birth with inductions, and they say it's like super painful. And I was like, oh my gosh, that's like the last thing that I want. Anywho, I had a very positive induction. First thing that happened, let's backtrack. Probably at my 33-week follow-up appointment, my blood pressure started going up. They started having me monitor it at home. After it gets like 140 over like 90s, like just give us a call and you can come in and like we'll check you out and blah, blah, blah. So one day I was literally having like a good day. Like I wasn't feeling anything weird. One day I was just hanging out at the grocery store with my aunt and uncle, and I came home and like all of a sudden I'm like, maybe I'll just check my blood pressure. Like I just like a weird instinct, and I checked it and it was really high. It was at least like it would stick around like the 145s over like the high 90s. And I was like, maybe I'll just call, you know, like let me just call and make sure like this is fine or whatever, because our hospital is an hour away. I called the doctor and I was like, oh, okay, like this is my blood pressure, but I don't know, like, you know, it's not that big of a deal, blah, blah, blah. And they're like, okay, maybe you should come in, like we'll just check you out, make sure everything's fine. And I was like, yeah, fine. Like, you know, by the time that I get there, my blood pressure is gonna be normal. And then they're gonna be like, oh my gosh, this lady is weird. Why is she coming in? Like her blood pressure is perfect. So I called Trevor and I'm like, hey, like we're gonna need to go to the hospital. Do you want me to go by myself or do you want to come with? And he's like, no, like I'll go with. And I was like, okay. We just went on our way, like literally no rush or anything, and got to the hospital, got checked in. We immediately got like in an OB room, so I was like, a little sus here. So when we got there, they're like, oh, like just put on a gown, like we're just gonna draw some blood and then we're just gonna check your blood pressure, just make sure that everything's normal. And I was like, oh, okay, yeah, sweet, fine. Like we'll be here probably an hour and then we'll get to go home. So they started laughing because I had a gown on and my shoes were still on, and they're like, are you expecting to leave? And I'm like, well, yeah. I'm like, I'm sure like once you check my blood pressure, it's gonna be normal. The monitor just starts dinging like crazy, and I was like, I was like, is it pretty normal? And they're like, no. They're like, you're not leaving tonight. Basically, they're like, you're gonna have this baby. Oh, let's burpee, mamas. Give me a minute here. We gotta burp, Miss Ma'am. Whoops, little tushy. I feel like they thought that I was like on the verge of preeclampsia or whatever, which we did end up having preeclampsia afterwards. Yeah, they checked it and it was like 160 over like 101 or whatever, and I'm like, okay, like they're like, you feel alright? I'm like, yeah, I feel like freaking great. Like I can go home and sleep it off and I'll be fine. My OB was also out of town, so I had to like doctor with a whole new like team and everything. I finally took my shoes off and I'm like, oh, I guess we're having a baby. And I feel like my blood pressure then after that skyrocketed even more, because that's literally the last thing that I was expecting was to have a baby that day and having an induction. The doctor came in and she's like, okay, like this is what we can do. We can start some Cytotec, which that like softens your cervix and stuff like that, so you can kind of dilate a little quicker. And then we'll start like this little tube, basically. I'll put a picture in here because I don't know what it's called, but we'll do this tube thingy that goes in your hoo-ha and is like supposed to start dilating you, so they'll fill it up with water or whatever. And I was like, okay, well, you know, it is what it is, like whatever it needs to be. So we started the Cytotec, and then we started the little balloon. Usually this little balloon like will make you dilate up to 4 centimeters, and it will like fall out by itself, or like they'll tug on it, and then like if it falls, like you're dilated to 4 centimeters. The process didn't really hurt, like it wasn't comfy. Like they use like them like plastic things that when you go get a pap smear, and I hate those things. Like those are the most uncomfiest things of my life. What, mamas? So then anywho, we started the balloon around, I think that was around like 7 o'clock, and then we also started the Cytotec. I started feeling some little contractions here and there. It wasn't anything like, oh my goodness. I literally just probably slept the whole entire night. Like I would feel them, like it would wake me up, but nothing where I'm like, oh my gosh. I think I got a full night's sleep. Throughout the whole night, they like were tugging on the little balloon and just like, just making sure, you know, blah, blah, it doesn't fall out, and it's nothing. It wouldn't budge for anything. After that came morning time, and you can only have the balloon like in you for 12 hours max. So it was like around 6 o'clock, and they came in and they tugged on it and nothing. And I was like, what the heck? Because I was starting to feel like serious pain, and I was like, oh my gosh. And they're like, we don't know why you're experiencing like this intensity of pain. They're like, when like this balloon, we can't even pull it out, so like you're not even dilated. You know, the doctor's gonna come in and she's going to, you know, talk to you about options. And I felt like then my heart really sank, because I'm like, I'm not progressing. It's been 12 hours. I feel like they might want to do a C-section, which is the last of the last of the last of the last things that I wanted. Or the Pitocin, because I heard the Pitocin really just escalates your pain, and then also like the contractions feel more intense. And I was like, oh my goodness, like what in the world? But I was like literally feeling the contractions like no other. And I got out of bed and I was like, what the heck? I was telling Trevor, I was like, what in the world? I'm like, I'm gonna have to get an epidural. I was like, because if I'm only 1 centimeter dilated and I'm already in this much pain, I cannot imagine. I'm from like 5, 8, or 9. Like what in the world? I started getting like really nauseous, and I was standing at the edge of the bed and I was just kind of like swaying back and forth, and I'm like, man, I like really need to vomit, and I also need to go to the restroom. Because you will feel like you need to go to the restroom like throughout the whole process, but you don't go to the restroom. At least I didn't. And all of a sudden I'm like, oh my gosh, I need to puke. So I grabbed the bucket that's right beside me, and I just start puking like insanely. And while I'm puking, the balloon in me is like coming out, and it's hurting so stinking bad, like so bad. Like the call light is like on the side of me, so I just like freaking yank it like no other. Trevor's like sitting on the chair, like literally like straight in front of me. And he says that the nurses came in like no freaking other. They're like, I just heard you just freaking pull on that string like no other. The nurses literally kicked in the door and started running towards the bathroom. The nurse came in and she's like, what's going on? I was like, get this thing out of me. I was like, what the hell? It hurts so bad. And with a few cuss words here and there. And she's like, oh my God, let me get like some gloves, whatever. And she's like, and then I just started puking. And then that thing falls out. And she's like, oh, it fell out. And I was like, oh my gosh. Mind you, at this point, I was only like 1 centimeter dilated the last time they checked me. And like the balloon was in there, so they couldn't tug it. So there was like nowhere near 4 centimeters. So anywho, the balloon fell, and one of the nurses was like, hey, do you mind like laying in bed so I can do a cervical check on you right away? And I was like, yeah, do whatever you want. Like, I have no idea what's going on. I lay in the bed, they start doing a cervical check, and they're like, she's 8 centimeters. And I was like, oh my God, what in the world? And they're like, just like, I have no idea how this happened. And they kept saying like, we kept pulling on the balloon, like it would not come out. Like, what is going on? Like literally I went from like 1 centimeter to like 8 centimeters in less than 30 minutes. And they just like start setting everything up. Like the room was like literally like in and out, people coming in and out, like the beds, they were bringing in like stuff to weigh her in, like all sorts of things. So at that point, I'm like really like, oh, like in my own zone. Like I was literally not paying attention to anybody. I don't even know half the people, what they said. And like, I was just literally in my own zone. And what I love about like having an unmedicated birth is like your body knows exactly what to do. It will move you in ways that like it's so beneficial for you. And that is something that I loved about having the unmedicated birth, is that your body like literally is like your guide. And as long as you like kind of just pay attention to it and just let it flow, and like quit thinking of like, oh, I seen like this video, like you're supposed to be in this position, like I'm only gonna be in this position. No, like if you just let your body do whatever the heck it wants, even if it's like the weirdest thing ever, you want to be on a handstand, whatever, like you do it. Because I think that's what progressed my labor so much, is like I was doing whatever the heck I wanted. And like my labor and delivery team was freaking phenomenal. Like I am so blessed by them. It is incredible. And at that point it was like 7-ish, almost 8-ish. My water still hadn't broken yet, and I was just in the shower, blah blah blah, and I just felt this sudden drop, and I was like, oh my God, I think she's coming. I was like, she's coming, Trevor. And he's just like, doesn't know what to do. I was like, get the nurse. So he goes out and gets the nurse, and she's like, okay, let's go lay in bed, let's go check you, whatever. And at that point I was like, she said 9.5 centimeters. So they're like, okay, like, do you mind just like staying in bed? Because literally it can happen at any moment. And I was like, okay, yeah, that's fine. Doctor comes in and she's like, hey, your water still hasn't broken, but like I can break it for you if you want. And I just asked like, okay, like what's gonna happen, blah blah. And it was perfect. Like she explained everything so amazingly. I was like, is this really gonna start hurting? Is this like, how long is this gonna take? Like, will I progress faster? And blah blah blah. And she's like, yes, of course. She's like, yes, of course, you're gonna start feeling more pain just because like that barrier is broken. So I was like, okay, yeah, just break my water, whatever. So she broke my water, and then like after that, a few minutes later, I was just kind of changing positions like the way my body wanted to, and they were also guiding me. They're like, okay, like, you know, sometimes if you sit like on the edge of the bed, or if you just want to start walking. I was like, there is no way in heck I'm gonna walk, like this is so much pain. And then all of a sudden I feel like another drop, and I was like, oh my goodness. And I turned and told her, I was like, she is for sure coming. I was like, I know she's coming right now. After this, it starts getting a little blurry, so there's a few spots that I might miss. But anywho, like either the OB or the nurse comes in and they start checking me and they're like, oh yeah, she's coming. So they start laying me, everybody starts coming in, da 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 da, and they're like, okay, we're just here, you do whatever the heck you want to do. And it was phenomenal, like literally phenomenal. And I just like laid back, they'd let me change positions, they did not care. They kind of like were like, hey, you know, we saw you progress a little more, like when you were like this, do you want to try it out again? No? Okay. So they're like, push whenever you feel the urge to push. Like, don't listen to anybody, you just do whatever you want to do. And at that point I was like, okay, and your body literally is doing it for you. Like, I could not hold in a push. Like, your body is literally pushing this baby out, and obviously you're helping it like when you push also. The hardest thing that I found is I could not like hold my breath while pushing, and if I held my breath, like I could not catch my breath again. And they're like, Sarah, breathe, and I was like trying to catch my breath again. But that took about an hour and 20 minutes to push her out. And so throughout the meantime, I was like on my back, sitting down, on my knees, like literally all sorts of things. Another thing that I really loved about it is like they were like, literally, if I took a break and I didn't push, like when my body wasn't telling me to push, they were just like side talking, having a conversation. And like, it was like the most chillest vibe of my life. And I was like, I can't wait to get birth again. Anywho, after that, okay, my contractions started slowing down and they kind of were noticing it. They're like, hey, like, are you feeling any of the contractions? And at that point I was like, no, but I was also like exhausted. Like I could pass out like between contractions. And then like once I felt it, like I started pushing. The doctor's like, hey, we can give you a little bit of Pitocin to just like kind of not speed up the process, but like get the contractions back again, because we were so close to like literally I could see her head. At that point I got a contraction. I started pushing so good. And they're like, you got it, Sarah, you got it, you got it. And then I was like, okay. And then it took a little while until I got the next contraction. So I was like, okay, yeah, give me some Pitocin, like whatever. And that started kicking things up like right away. So anywho, I started pushing. She was coming. And then it starts the ring of fire. And oh my goodness, that's when the pain was intense. And at that point I was like, I can't do this. Because mind you, I know like in a lot of videos they tell you, or like a lot of anything that you read, they're like, oh, like don't scream, just moo it out. There was no mooing it out here. I was full-blown screaming. And that for me was perfect, because that I feel like helped me not tear as bad, and also I don't know, it helped me push. Like that's, I don't know, it really helped. So first off, if you're a screamer, just scream. Don't moo if you don't feel like mooing it. So yeah, ring of fire started happening and I was like, I can't do it. And I literally started climbing up the bed and they're like, Sarah, she's almost here. I was like, I can't. They're like, yes, you can. She's about here. So then anywho, all I felt was like literally just pain. I closed my eyes and I just like was pushing. And all I felt was like once her like little body left me, I was like, well, we're done. And yeah, after that, they're like, she's here, oh my gosh, put her on my belly, blah, blah, blah. And yeah, then they just started doing their own thing, and they were like, okay, we, you know, you got a little 2nd degree tear. Like, no, it was like a first, almost a second. And so anywho, yeah, I'm just chilling there with my baby girl, and they're doing their thing. And after that, literally didn't feel the placenta coming out. I think I was just literally engulfed in her. What else did they do? Yeah, they were kind of just stitching me, putting some injections in you that freaking hurt. I think it was more so to like numb the area, but nice sting. And oh gosh, they're like, as soon as I birthed her, they're like, do you want something to eat? I'm like, please give me some food. Because you know how I was telling you guys in the previous video that I filmed, like, oh yeah, I'm gonna get some snacks, I'm gonna order food, I'm gonna eat throughout labor, because they were literally like not against it, like you can eat, drink, whatever the heck you want. And then when we got there, your girl didn't eat, because literally food was the last thing that I thought about. The pain, okay, not gonna lie, you do kind of forget about the pain afterwards. I was always like kind of sketched when people are like, oh, you will forget about it afterwards. Like you'll feel pain here and there, but you literally are engulfed in like this weird, like just feeling so empowered, feeling so amazing, like seeing what you created, what God gave you, and it is the wildest experience ever. Postpartum hurts. I will have to say that postpartum hurts, but like contractions and everything, you kind of forget about them. And it didn't get that bad. I think I started really struggling at 8 centimeters. That's when I was like, I feel it so bad. That is my positive induction story. I hope, honestly, if you have to be induced, really just go in with a clear mind. I wish I would have done that way better, because I know from when my blood pressure was like 160 over 101 and then they told me I was giving birth, I know it was like in the 200s over like 120 because my heart sank. I was just literally like, what the heck? Obviously I was a little devastated, but I'm like, you know, if this is the way that I need to go, it's gonna go this way. If you're doing an unmedicated birth, listen to your body. Do whatever the heck your body wants you to do. If it wants you to be crisscross applesauce, be crisscross applesauce. If it wants you to stand, stand. If it wants you to lay down, lay down. Anything and everything. I will have to say is rest as much as you can throughout like the first part of your labor and then start like walking and doing stuff or whatever you want to do, because I feel like you can really exhaust yourself in the beginning and then be too exhausted to like continue throughout like the later process where it starts getting hard and then the pushing part. And besides that, if you have a shower, hop in the shower. Highly recommend. Warm water, don't know what it does, but feels phenomenal. On the toilet sucked for me because I felt the worst pain on the toilet, but I know for a lot of moms they say it's great. And also scream. Who the heck cares? Literally at that point I was like, I do not care who hears me. Literally do not care. I just want this baby out of me, healthy, and I want to be healthy. And screaming for me was like literally, that's what really helped me push her out, because if I would be like this baby out, there is no way that this baby was coming out. So do whatever works for you. If mooing works for you, moo it out. If it's screaming, scream it out. I also think if I probably would have moved it out, it probably would have torn a lot worse than I did. If you're wanting to do an unmedicated birth, trust that you can do it and you can go through it. Literally, your mind will go to the point where it's like, I can't do this anymore. Like you will literally go, like, I don't know if that's normal or if people are like, no, like my mind never went there. Mine did, where I was like, I don't think I can do this. But besides that, just kind of fight through and be like, no, like I wanted this. Because literally in bed when I'd feel a little bit of pain, I'm like, oh yeah, contraction, I want them, bring them in, come in, contractions, like literally calling the contractions into my body. And so when I was like contracting, I would literally be giggling because I'm like, oh my goodness, this is what I wanted, this is what I'm asking for. So, and I just kind of ride it out, ride the waves. But just know that your mind will go there and it's fine, but don't let it stay there. Just kind of take yourself out of it. Trust God's timing. And if it's induction, it's induction. If it's a C-section, it's a C-section. If you give up and want the epidural, get the epidural. Who the heck cares? Literally, it's your labor, your delivery, your story. Choose whatever the heck you want. Anyhow, I don't want to make this video super, super long because it's already saying it's 31 minutes. So, anywho, besides that, that is my positive induction and natural labor. No, delivery. It wasn't a natural labor, it was induction. So now we have my little peanut here. She is 3 weeks today and she's a phenomenal baby. Phenomenal, literally. That is it for this video. I hope you guys have enjoyed watching. I'm gonna go lay my baby girl now in her bassinet. See if she can get a little bit of sleep in before the big night.